10 recent terrifying archaeological discoveries that even the world's top scientists can't explain. Hello, and welcome to Ancient History. My friends, history is like a massive book, of which humanity has only managed to read the first few pages. The more we explore, the more we realize that beneath layers of earth and stone, inside dark caves, at the bottom of deep lakes, and across remote desert landscapes, countless secrets are still waiting to be uncovered. What makes it even more fascinating is that many of the greatest archaeological discoveries were made completely by accident, leaving even scientists astonished. Just think about it. What would happen if a vast ancient city were discovered beneath a lake after disappearing for nearly 2,000 years? Or if a 7,200-year-old skeleton suddenly revealed the existence of a human lineage that humanity had never known about before? And would you believe that in the cold bogs of northern Europe, there are still bodies more than 2,000 years old whose skin and soft tissues remain so well preserved that it seems as though time itself never touched them? And that's only the beginning. Some stories are even stranger than that. A World War II aircraft believed to have crashed into the sea was unexpectedly found 17 years later in the Libyan desert. An enormous stone complex, thousands of years older than Stonehenge, was discovered beneath a field in Spain, and the remains of two individuals who had lain hand in hand for 3,500 years continue to spark debate among scientists about the true nature of their relationship. Each discovery is like a missing piece of the past. Some mysteries have been solved, but others continue to raise questions that science has yet to answer definitively. And on today's journey, we're going to travel back through time together to explore some of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries ever made. True stories that can sometimes seem even more unbelievable than fiction itself. With every secret uncovered, even more mysteries emerge, waiting to be explored. So, are you ready to join me on this adventure? If you are, then let's get started right now. 4,000-year-old gold-hilted sword beneath a soccer field in Scotland. A Bronze Age secret has just awakened. You know, our world may seem very small, but it holds countless fascinating and mysterious secrets. Some secrets lie hidden inside pyramids, while others are buried beneath vast deserts. But some of the most incredible mysteries are not hidden in majestic places like those. Instead, they lie right beneath a modern soccer field, where people walk every day without realizing that beneath their feet are the remains of a world that vanished thousands of years ago. A powerful example of this comes from a discovery in Carnoustie, Angus, Scotland. While workers were constructing a new soccer field, they unexpectedly struck an ancient metal object buried deep underground. At first, nobody thought it was important, but as layers of mud and dirt were carefully cleared away, the shape of an ancient sword slowly began to appear. And at that very moment, the entire construction site was immediately shut down. After being notified, archaeologists quickly arrived at the scene to expand the investigation. They understood that this discovery might not simply be an ancient weapon, but possibly a clue leading to an entire cache of Bronze Age artifacts lying dormant beneath the soil of Scotland. And do you know what shocked experts the most? It was the sword's hilt, which was made of gold. Although the sword itself was relatively small, it displayed extremely distinctive features of the Bronze Age, a period around 4,000 years ago when humans first began mastering metallurgy and crafting far more sophisticated weapons. Just imagine it, 4,000 years ago, while much of the world still lived in primitive communities, people in this cold northern land of Europe already possessed bronze weapons decorated with intricate gold details. Doesn't that suggest that society at the time may have been far more advanced than we once believed? For that very reason, immediately after being excavated, the ancient sword was transported to a laboratory for extensive scientific analysis. Researchers hope that studying the artifact will help them better understand its origin, manufacturing techniques, and the role this weapon may have played in ancient society. According to initial assessments, the sword may have been broken long before it was buried underground. However, because the artifact is both extremely ancient and exceptionally rare, experts have not yet reached a final conclusion. Archaeologist Alan Hunter Blair, the lead researcher on the project, stated that the archaeological team is still working to uncover additional artifacts around the discovery site. He described the find as extraordinarily rare for Scottish archaeology. What makes the discovery even more significant is that it may be connected to a Bronze Age weapons hoard dating back thousands of years. And if that is true, then many more secrets could still be hidden beneath the ground of Carnoustie. And this is not the first time the area has surprised archaeologists. Previously, scientists discovered the remains of a Bronze Age woman believed to have died around 3,700 years ago in Carnoustie. Evidence gathered from multiple excavations suggests that this region was once heavily populated during the Bronze Age. That means the place, which today is covered with soccer fields, streets, and modern houses, was once home to ancient communities skilled in metallurgy, tool-making, and perhaps even warriors who fought with swords thousands of years ago. Just hearing that is enough to send chills down your spine, isn't it? Because sometimes history never truly disappears. It simply lies silently beneath the earth, waiting for the day humans accidentally awaken it. A small sword with a golden hilt could open the door to an enormous story about Bronze Age civilization in Scotland. And who knows, beneath that unfinished soccer field, there may still be ancient tunnels, warrior tombs, or even the hidden treasures of a community that vanished from the world 4,000 years ago. The deeper we dig, the more history reveals that humanity's past still holds far more secrets than we ever imagined. The Roman Empire's death well and the 7 skeletons thrown to the bottom for 1,700 years. In the city of Osijek in eastern Croatia, there was an ancient well that had remained buried and forgotten for nearly 2 millennia. From the outside, it looked no different from any ordinary ruin left behind from the days of ancient Rome. But no one could have imagined that beneath the darkness at the bottom of that well lay a bloody and violent secret of the Roman Empire. This story came to light in 2011 when archaeologists began excavating the area before the construction of a new university in Osijek. During the dig, they unexpectedly uncovered an ancient well hidden deep underground. In Roman times, this area was known as Mursa, an extremely important military settlement located near the empire's frontier. At first, experts believed it was simply another ancient water structure like many Roman wells previously discovered across Europe. But as they dug deeper toward the bottom, the atmosphere at the site grew increasingly tense. Then came the horrifying discovery. Beneath the cold layers of mud and soil were human skeletons piled on top of one another in the darkness. In total, 7 adult male skeletons were discovered at the bottom of the well. What made the scene especially disturbing was that the bodies had not been buried according to any traditional ritual. Instead, they had been thrown in carelessly in chaotic positions. Some skeletons were lying on their sides, while others were face down with their heads pointed directly toward the bottom of the well, as if they had been violently tossed in without mercy. For nearly 1,700 years, the well had remained a hidden mass grave unknown to the world. According to Mario Novak, a bioarchaeologist at the Institute for Anthropological Research in Zagreb, Croatia, and the lead author of the study, all of the men appeared to have been stripped of every valuable possession before being thrown into the well. There were no weapons, no armor, no jewelry, and nothing that could help identify them. This strongly suggested that the site was far more than a normal burial. After detailed analysis, researchers confirmed that all 7 skeletons belonged to adult men. 4 of them were relatively young, while the other 3 were middle-aged. But what truly sent chills through the experts was the evidence of injuries found on their bodies. Some of the skeletons showed signs of severe blunt force trauma to the head. Several individuals had broken ribs, while others still bore marks consistent with wounds caused by sharp weapons. In other words, these men had most likely endured a brutal battle before their deaths. Not only that, but scientists also discovered evidence suggesting that several of them had suffered from respiratory infections shortly before they died. This reflects the extremely harsh living conditions faced by Roman soldiers during the wars and chaos of the 3rd century. To determine the exact time period, experts used carbon dating on 4 of the skeletons. The results showed that the men lived during the second half of the 3rd century AD. What makes this especially remarkable is that the dating perfectly matches the only artifact discovered at the bottom of the well, a Roman coin minted in 251 AD. Based on the archaeological evidence and the geographic location of the town of Mursa, researchers eventually reached a chilling conclusion. The 7 skeletons were most likely Roman soldiers who had fought in the Battle of Mursa in 260 AD. This was a bloody civil war between Emperor Gallienus and the Roman general Ingenuus, who had rebelled in an attempt to seize the throne of the Roman Empire, but ultimately failed. According to ancient historical records, after his victory, Emperor Gallienus brutally punished those who had supported Ingenuus. He reportedly showed almost no mercy to the defeated. That is why researchers believe the 7 skeletons at the bottom of the well may have belonged to soldiers loyal to Ingenuus. After losing the battle, they were stripped of their possessions, killed or left to die, and then thrown into the well as a cold and calculated way to dispose of their bodies. Today, that ancient well is no longer just an underground structure. It has become a silent piece of evidence from one of the most chaotic and blood-soaked periods of the Roman Empire, a time when defeated soldiers could be erased from history in the cruelest possible way, left forever at the bottom of a dark well for nearly 17 centuries. Just thinking about it is enough to send chills down your spine, isn't it? 1,700-year-old Roman cemetery discovered beneath a house basement. The story began when a homeowner in the Montconseil district of the city of Corbeil-Essonnes, south of Paris, decided to renovate the basement of their house. While digging beneath the old floor, they suddenly uncovered a human skeleton buried deep underground. At first, many people assumed it was simply an old forgotten grave from the Middle Ages, but no one could have imagined that this small discovery would lead to the excavation of an entire ancient cemetery buried for nearly 2,000 years. As soon as authorities were notified, French archaeologists quickly arrived at the site to begin investigating. And the deeper they dug, the more astonished they became as they uncovered numerous additional graves packed tightly beneath the house. So far, archaeologists have excavated a total of 38 graves within an area of approximately 560 square feet, spread across 4 basement rooms beneath the home. What makes the site even more remarkable is that the graves span nearly 700 years of history. The oldest burial dates back to the 3rd century AD, a time when the Roman Empire still ruled much of Europe. That means the earliest individuals buried there were laid to rest underground around 1,700 years ago. But as researchers continued their work, they realized the site was far more complex than they had first imagined. Initially, experts believed it was simply a medieval cemetery because a chapel had once existed in the area during the 7th century. However, the discovery of much older graves shocked everyone involved. It now appears that before the chapel was built, the land may have once been home to an even older pagan temple. In other words, this location may have served as a burial ground for many centuries in a row. Most of the newly discovered graves were arranged neatly in parallel rows. The bodies had been laid on their backs inside wooden coffins that have now almost completely decayed with time. But what drew the greatest attention from archaeologists were 10 burials dating to the Merovingian period of the Franks, a Germanic people who ruled large parts of Europe after the fall of the Roman Empire. Unlike the other graves, these individuals were buried inside unusual plaster sarcophagi arranged in a fan-shaped pattern. According to experts, Merovingian coffins have been discovered in other parts of France before. Some were decorated with carvings and occasionally contained multiple bodies at once. But strangely, most of the coffins uncovered in Corbeil-Essonnes had no decorations at all, and each contained only a single individual. That discovery immediately raised a series of new questions for researchers. Who were the people buried beneath the ground here? Why was this location used as a cemetery for nearly 700 years? And what caused a site that may once have been a pagan temple to later become a cemetery, and eventually the location of a medieval chapel? At present, archaeologists are continuing to excavate and study the newly discovered skeletons. Detailed examinations will be conducted to determine the age, sex, health conditions, and even the diets of the people who lived there thousands of years ago. The 1,700-year-old skeleton of a man missing his tongue, discovered in England. The story began in 1991 when archaeologists were excavating an ancient cemetery in Northamptonshire. At first, it seemed like a routine archaeological investigation, since the cemetery contained many skeletons dating back to the Roman period. But while cleaning the remains of one adult male skeleton, experts noticed something deeply unsettling. Inside the mouth of the skeleton, there was no sign of a tongue. Instead, resting neatly between the teeth was a flat stone. The moment this strange discovery was made, it immediately drew the attention of researchers. The skeleton was later carefully analyzed by scientists from historic England in an effort to uncover the man's identity and understand the cause of this mysterious condition. According to the research findings, The man lived sometime during the 3rd or 4th century AD, more than 1,700 years ago. He was around 30 years old when he died, but the question that has troubled scientists for years is this: why was the man's tongue missing, and why had someone placed a stone exactly where it should have been? Simon Mayes, a biological anthropologist at Historic England, explained that the stone may have been used to replace the missing tongue. However, no one still knows exactly what truly happened to this mysterious man. So was this part of some ancient ritual? In trying to answer that question, researchers developed several theories. Some experts believe the man may have suffered from mental illness and bitten off his own tongue before his death. Throughout history, there have been documented cases of people deliberately harming themselves because of psychological disorders or extreme religious beliefs. But another theory is far more terrifying. Some researchers believe the missing tongue may have been the result of punishment for people considered dangerous because of their words or speech. Simon Mayes pointed out that several ancient Germanic law codes mention tongue cutting as a punishment for people accused of speaking dangerously, opposing others, or causing unrest in society. What confuses researchers, however, is that they have found no clear evidence showing that Roman communities in Britain practiced this exact punishment, and that only deepens the mystery surrounding the skeleton. If this truly was a form of punishment, then what had the man done to deserve such cruel treatment? Was he a criminal, a rebel, or simply the victim of a strange ritual long forgotten by history? And perhaps the biggest question of all, who placed the stone inside his mouth after death? In many ancient European cultures, people believed that placing objects inside the mouths of the dead could prevent spirits from returning or protect the living from evil forces. But the case in Northamptonshire is so unusual that experts still cannot determine exactly which ritual it may belong to. What makes this even more fascinating is that this skeleton is not the only archaeological discovery suggesting that ancient people practiced extremely strange burial customs. Across Europe, archaeologists have uncovered skeletons buried with tied limbs, stones placed in their mouths, or bodies buried in unusual positions because ancient societies feared the dead might return to haunt the living. It is possible that this man from England was part of those terrifying beliefs as well. But what makes the story even more haunting is this: after nearly 2,000 years, modern humanity still has no idea what truly happened to him. There are no historical records, no known name, and no information about the life he once lived. All that remains is a silent skeleton lying beneath the earth with a strange stone resting inside its mouth, as if it is still trying to tell a secret that time has never allowed humanity to fully uncover. A mass of child mummies in a mysterious tomb in Italy reveals a shocking hidden truth. In what appears to be an ordinary tourist site, there exists a place where hundreds of bodies have remained almost perfectly preserved for centuries, so well preserved that some children still look as if they are simply sleeping. Just hearing that is already chilling, isn't it? Yet this is the reality inside the Capuchin catacombs in Palermo, located in the northern part of the island of Sicily, Italy. This place has long been known as one of the most disturbing sites in Europe, but only recently have scientists begun to seriously investigate a major mystery hidden within it. In a newly launched research phase led by a team of experts headed by Kirsty Squires from Staffordshire University in the United Kingdom, researchers officially conducted field studies to examine the large number of child mummies preserved there. Specifically, out of a total of 163 child mummies scattered throughout the catacombs, 41 bodies were placed in a separate, isolated section. These children became the central focus of the study. As researchers moved deeper into the catacombs, the scene resembled nothing less than a museum of death. The child mummies were still wearing their original clothing, preserved almost completely intact over time. Some were placed in cribs, some were seated on chairs, and others were even propped upright with sticks, as if they were still present in this world. In particular, some of the mummies were so well preserved that they looked like small dolls, a sight that would make anyone feel uneasy. According to historical records, these children were buried between 1787 and 1880. That means they have been resting there for over a century, some nearly 2 centuries. Today, this site is considered one of the largest surviving catacombs containing mummies in Europe. However, what truly challenges researchers is not the number of bodies, but the lack of information. There are almost no detailed records identifying who these children were, their lives, or the causes of their deaths. Nevertheless, according to initial assessments by Kirsty Squires, most of the children likely did not come from poor families. At that time, mummification was not a common practice for everyone. It was typically reserved for wealthier families such as the nobility, the middle class, or members of the clergy. This suggests that these children may have come from families of certain social standing. But this raises another question. If their families had the means, why were they not buried in the traditional way like everyone else? To find answers, the research team applied a modern, non-invasive method: X-ray imaging. They used portable X-ray devices directly inside the catacombs to analyze each body without disturbing its condition. Through this process, scientists were able to estimate each child's age by examining the development of their teeth and bones. In total, they produced 574 X-ray images to build detailed biological profiles for each mummy. These data allowed researchers to investigate whether mummification was related to age or gender, and also to identify signs of illness, developmental disorders, or injuries the children may have suffered during their lives. Beyond determining causes of death, the researchers also aimed to reconstruct the lives of these children, from their nutrition and health conditions to their living environments. In doing so, they hope to uncover a forgotten chapter of history. According to Kirsty Squires, in ancient beliefs, mummification was not merely a method of preserving bodies. It was also a way to preserve social identity after death. Family members could visit and see the familiar appearance of their loved ones, as if they were still present in this world. At this point, you might be wondering, did these children ever live happy lives? Or behind those carefully preserved small bodies, are there untold tragic stories? That question is completely understandable, because both I and the scientists share the same curiosity. Unfortunately, even today, there are still no answers. It remains an unsolved mystery.